He wasn't looking for a promotion. He didn't hope for praise. But that very man ended up saving an entire system from collapse. In a world where success is measured by numbers, reports, and polished speeches, there was one man who chose to do the right thing from the shadows. No one called his name in meetings. No one handed him an award for the things he quietly fixed. But one day, the undercover CEO returned. And what he saw didn't just change the way he led. It made an entire company bow to someone they had never even noticed. This is a story you cannot miss. A quiet strength. A victory that never asked for the spotlight. Watch until the very last second, because after this, you'll never look at work the same way again. Why would a perfect employee keep a CEO awake at night? That question first echoed in Nathan Grant's mind as he placed two folders side by side on the clean, knotted oak desk in his office at OrionX headquarters. On the left, the performance report, a steadily rising curve, near zero error rate, and Aurora branch topping all KPIs for the quarter. But on the right, just a small slip of paper clipped to the HR file. Handwritten, with only a few short lines. Marco Velasquez, night shift employee. Always arrives early, leaves late, often seen walking around the technical wing without a clear reason. No violations, no complaints, but unusual. Those last two words sliced through Nathan's intuition like a silent blade. Not painful at first, but chillingly unsettling. Unusual. To a CEO like him, it was the kind of word people used when they wanted to avoid the truth, or worse, pretend it didn't exist. Because truth, when left unexamined, lies beneath the dust of things everyone sees but no one wants to touch. Nathan looked out through the floor-to-ceiling windows, where the Chicago night sky seemed stitched together from 1,000 shattered lights, flickering between the endless movement of a city that never slept. The streets below shimmered with ribbons of headlights, flowing like ghostly rivers through the city's heart. It pulsed in amber and gold, like a heartbeat under neon. But to him, it all faded into the background of a single unanswered question. He leaned back slowly in his chair, exhaled, and murmured. No one mentions Marco when it's time to celebrate success. No one blames him when things go wrong. And yet somehow, it's the invisible ones like him who bring me back to the place that taught me the most important lesson of all. True value isn't measured by where you sit on the org chart. It's found in the quiet things you fix when no one's watching. And when his instinct tapped gently at his thoughts, like footsteps echoing in a dark hallway, it's time to go where the spotlight doesn't reach. Nathan knew this journey wouldn't just be about uncovering the truth. It would be about remembering something he had almost forgotten. Leadership isn't just about standing above. It's about walking beside those who truly carry the weight. The plastic badge read Evan Brooks, a name that meant nothing to anyone, but it fit the role just right. Nathan received it from a staffing agency he used to work with, back when he was just a warehouse cleaner, walking across cold, damp concrete floors in cheap shoes, far from the corner office he now occupied. The outfit, a faded hoodie, scuffed jeans, a worn-out cap, and steel-toe work boots. The man staring back in a mirror was no longer the sharp-eyed, confident CEO of OrionX. In his place stood someone quieter, observant, reserved, but fully ready to face whatever lay ahead. That night, the Aurora Distribution Center welcomed a new hire. 6:02 p.m. No greetings, just a stiff handoff, a thick clipboard, and a curt command. Zone 3. You'll shadow Marco. Receiving. The voice came from Greg, the night shift manager. Buzz-cut hair, voice like gravel, and a demeanor that seemed allergic to eye contact. It was as if looking directly at his subordinates was, to Greg, a form of weakness, one he refused to show. Following the directions, Nathan walked past rows of towering shelves lit by flickering green LEDs, pulsing like the heartbeat of a well-oiled machine. He spotted Marco before anyone said a word. The man was sliding a shipping crate onto the conveyor belt with the ease of someone who had done it 1,000 times. Lean frame. Focused movements. No hesitation. I'm Evan. New guy, Nathan offered. Marco nodded, sliding the clipboard toward him. Have you ever worked outbound before? Not much. I'll walk you through it. Just do it right. Short, precise. No welcome, no coldness, no small talk, just the efficient rhythm of someone who treated work like breathing. And it was that very simplicity, deliberate and unshaken, that made Nathan unable to look away. Mid-shift break. While most of the night crew gathered around the vending machines, seeking a sugary snack or trading idle stories to pass the time, Nathan chose an empty shipping crate near the receiving zone, pretending to scroll through his phone. But his eyes never left Marco. Marco didn't join the chatter. He quietly moved behind the storage racks, picking up torn packaging, discarded zip ties, and bits of plastic wrap left behind by careless hands. Then he paused in front of a crooked warning sign, adjusted it to sit straight, and walked back toward the receiving dock, all within his allotted 15-minute break. The way Marco moved made Nathan quietly unsettled. Meticulous, effortless, like a ritual he'd performed night after night. Marco acted as if someone had assigned him the silent duty of keeping every forgotten corner of the warehouse in order, even though no job description said anything of the sort. He didn't do it because anyone was watching. He didn't do it because he was told. He did it because, to him, this wasn't just a shift. It was a relationship between a man and the unspoken responsibility he had quietly chosen to carry. The next shift at the Aurora warehouse was far busier. Scanners beeped rhythmically. Forklifts groaned and weaved between towering racks like mechanical beasts straining under invisible weight. The air buzzed with random chatter, the kind shared by people too familiar with exhaustion. But then, for one eerie moment, everything fell silent. The warehouse, normally a cacophony of motion and noise, seemed to hold its breath. A sharp mechanical scream broke through the stillness. A forklift sputtered, coughed once, and went dead. The driver jumped out of the cabin, shaking his head. "This one's been acting up. I reported the issue weeks ago." Greg didn't flinch. "Label it defective. Maintenance will deal with it." Marco had been pushing a pallet into the loading zone, but something in him shifted. He stepped away, not asking permission, not speaking a word. It wasn't defiance. It was something older, a reflex carved in a muscle memory. Marco knelt down beside the forklift, lifted his chin just slightly, and gently opened the machine's housing. His movements were swift, cautious, but sure. Nathan stood nearby, pretending to reorganize a stack of boxes. Yet his eyes never left Marco. From his jacket pocket, Marco pulled out a small screwdriver, gave it a few quick test turns between his fingers, and leaned in. 3 minutes later, the forklift started back up. The driver blinked, stunned. What the heck just happened? Marco said nothing. He walked back, picked up his half-finished pallet, and carried on. The warehouse resumed its rhythm, as if the moment had never happened. But inside Nathan, something shifted. This man wasn't just doing a job. He was holding the system together. When the last workers of the night shift filed out, the entire Aurora warehouse sank into a silence, so heavy it felt suffocating. The lights dimmed into night mode, casting a pale green glow across everything, a quiet mist that seemed to blur the line between reality and reflection. Like clockwork, Marco didn't leave right away. Instead, he slipped into a narrow hallway beside the discarded pallet zone, moving toward a dark, narrow aisle, the kind security cameras didn't bother to watch. Nathan followed silently, a few steps behind. Marco stopped in front of an old metal door. Its hinges were rusted, the paint flaking in patches, no nameplate, no markings. Just a forgotten slab of steel. He reached up to the lock, turned it gently. The door creaked open with a dry, aching groan, as though its joints were screaming after years of being ignored. Inside wasn't a utility room, nor was it a regular storage space. It was barely large enough for one person to stand. But what it held was staggering. On the wall hung a hand-drawn schematic of the entire Aurora facility. Notes were marked for every camera angle and its blind spots. Red dots indicated hazards. Slippery ramp, loose carriage, exposed wiring. Beneath the small desk were dozens of journals, all handwritten, maintenance logs, equipment diaries, unresolved safety issues, recorded with meticulous care. Each page is folded, numbered. Each note was penned in precise block letters. Neat, methodical. Nathan stood frozen. In a company that boasted flawless workflows and polished reports, there had been one man quietly holding the cracks together. A man no one saw. A man who never asked to be thanked. The next day, Nathan returned to the Aurora warehouse. But something inside him felt different now. Wearing the same worn-out work uniform, cap pulled low to hide most of his eyes, he held a clipboard and pretended to be checking inventory, shelf by shelf. Marco was arranging a row of improperly stacked pallets. His face glistened with sweat, yet his hands moved steadily, shifting the heavy loads with practiced ease. "Don't you ever take a break?" Nathan asked casually. His eyes scanned the paper without really reading, as if his thoughts were focused elsewhere entirely. Marco replied simply, "Everyone has their part. This is mine." Then he turned back to his work, completely unaware that those words, so ordinary on the surface, had stirred something deep in the heart of the man standing behind him. A man who stood at the top of the entire organization. A man is now questioning everything he once believed to be true. 2 days later, in the headquarters executive boardroom, Nathan stood before the leadership team. He laid a thick stack of documents on the table. Surveillance schematics, handwritten logs, and photographs of the hidden room. "We've built a system that looks great on paper," he began. But it stopped there. Marco saw what we failed to see. The room fell into silence. Eyes shifted, caught between disbelief and reflection. Nathan didn't need to raise his voice. The power was in the truth he was exposing. He documented. He remembered. He addressed details that an entire development department missed. On his own, he fought against the apathy and automation embedded in our system. Stillness. Today, I'm not just recommending Marco for Employee of the Month. I propose we establish a new operational safety division and let him lead it. A quiet exhale came from the corner, from the senior director, a man rarely known to show emotion. Then, like dominoes falling, someone began to clap. Not loud, not theatrical, but heavy with recognition and respect. At last, the silence had found its voice. 2 weeks after that seismic meeting, the Aurora warehouse looked much the same on the surface. But the air had changed. Overhead wires were now neatly tied and secured. Anti-slip mats had been firmly fastened. On every wall, a handwritten bulletin read, "What to do before ending your shift," followed by a checklist of small but meaningful tasks. Sweep up debris, stabilize loose pallets, and oil machinery. Nathan returned, but this time, no disguise, no cap. He walked in as himself, with a genuine smile. Marco stood inside the newly refurbished safety operations room, guiding 2 new hires through protocols. The once hidden blueprints had been redrawn and color-coded. QR code tags are now hung beside key areas for instant safety reporting. At the center, a large LED screen displayed real-time safety alerts across the entire facility. "CEO." One of the trainees gasped mid-sentence, eyes wide with recognition. Marco didn't react with surprise. Nathan simply nodded in greeting, then extended his hand. Marco hesitated for a brief second. He looked at the hand, and in that glance, they saw the entire journey they'd just walked. Then he reached forward. A firm grip. No words. Just the kind of handshake built over quiet nights, unnoticed effort, and earned respect. It was simple, but carried the full weight of everything they had been through. A moment of recognition from the one who quietly changed the system, and the one brave enough to honor it. 3 months later, when Nathan returned to Aurora on an unannounced visit, he walked the same warehouse paths he had on day one. But one thing was unmistakable. Aurora was no longer the same. It wasn't just the procedures or the layout. It was in the way people looked at each other. He saw a night shift worker helping a newcomer tie down a crate. A handwritten note left on the safety board read, "Zone F is still slightly slippery. Please recheck." These small acts were never part of the official protocol, but now they were habits. In the safety office, Marco was giving a presentation to a group of supervisors from other branches, sharing the new standard model built at Aurora. On the screen was a slide that read, "Safety is everyone's responsibility, even when no one is watching. Nathan didn't step inside. He stood by the doorway, watching through the glass, and nodded quietly, as if to say, "I see you." He knew then, change had begun. And this time, it wouldn't be buried in the shadows. I don't live to be remembered. I work so that no one else has to pay the price for what seems small. My name is Marco. I work the night shift. No one remembers me. No one notices. I don't sit in boardrooms or air-conditioned offices. I show up, night after night, like one of the silent gears in this system. Colorless, soundless. But if I break, the whole thing stops. I used to think that just doing my job well was enough. But I've learned silence isn't always enough, especially when being different makes others uncomfortable. I used to be a stranger in my own team. I didn't smoke with them during breaks, didn't join their talks about movies, games, or workplace gossip. I didn't share stories about my family, my partner, or complain about my boss. I spent my breaks reviewing maintenance reports, walking through the racks to check cords and safety latches. I heard the whispers. They said I was arrogant. They laughed and called me that guy trying too hard. They joked I was the human stopwatch, management's hidden eye, but I wasn't trying to stand out. I did it because I've seen carelessness destroy the most beautiful things in a family. Once, just a plastic bag almost took everything. That night, a light breeze blew in from the western loading dock. No one noticed a plastic bag floating across the warehouse. Probably someone's food wrapper tossed carelessly in a corner. The wind carried it into a running machine. I saw it, ran, hit the emergency stop, pulled it out, just inches from main belt. If I hadn't been there, I can't imagine what would have happened. The belt would have caught. The wheels could have slipped. The rack might have come crashing down. Someone could have been hurt, even killed. And the cause? No one managed the trash. No one cared about a piece of nylon. Because to them, it was just a small thing. A small thing? Then what about these? Once, someone forgot to lock a harness clip during shift change. A single slip, and a 300 kilograms crate nearly fell on a new hire's foot. Luckily, I rechecked everything just before they hit the power button. Another time, a steel panel was bent, just slightly, but enough to misalign the entire force distribution during transport. It looked fine. No one noticed. I measured. It was off by 1.8 millimeters. Sound small? Over 12 hours, that tiny bend was enough to send the conveyor off track, enough to jam the system. And again, I fixed it, while others laughed over coffee, chatting about the weekend. I don't resent them. I just wish they knew how lucky they are. I understand. Humans need connection. They stay for the people, not just the job. They find joy in conversation, in belonging. I respect that. But while they're laughing, I see the frayed ropes. I see the loose screws. I see mistakes waiting to compound into disasters. I don't say these things to change them. I just keep doing my part. Because I know people only understand the value of precision. When a single misstep costs them everything. I'm not a star. I'm the hinge. The last strip of glue holding everything together. I never thought anyone would notice. And honestly, I never hoped they would. Until that night, when the new guy showed up. Evan. There was something in his eyes. Quiet, watchful, just like mine. He asked, "You work like the whole system could collapse at any second?" And I said, "Because I know it can. All it takes is one person skipping one step." I didn't know then that Evan was Nathan Grant, the CEO of Orion X, the man at the very top. That night, for the first time, I saw someone with power choose to listen instead of commanding. I don't need my name on a bulletin board. I just hope that one day these little things are seen for what they truly are, the difference between life and death. If you ask me why I live, I'll say this: because I never want anyone else to sit outside an emergency room, repeating the words my mother once cried. If only someone had been more careful. My name is Marco Velasquez. I work the night shift. No one's waiting for me at home, but I make sure everyone else gets home safe. I never imagined the man beside me all those nights was the one at the top of it all. That night began like every other. I showed up 15 minutes early, as always. Checked the tension straps, the breaker panel, ran my fingers over every safety latch in Zone 3. The warehouse smelled the same, oil, metal, and concrete. The LED lights flickered the same cold blue. Steel wheels grinding on the cement floors, the usual sounds. Nothing warned me that tonight would be different. As I reviewed the shipping schedule, Greg, the night manager, pointed toward a man waiting near the dock. Marco, this is Evan, new hire. He's shadowing you tonight. He glanced over, wore a gray hoodie, cap pulled low. His eyes held something unfamiliar. He nodded silently. No small talk, no joking, just watching, listening, taking everything in. I didn't ask much, as long as he did things right. I didn't have time for meaningless chatter. I did my job, as always, and he followed me like a shadow. I showed him how to check safety pins, how to gauge hook tension, how to load the conveyor without causing an imbalance. He didn't ask many questions, just watched, and repeated every move precisely. Once, I left him to monitor the line, while I inspected a new safety rig in Zone 4. When I came back, he was crouched low, eyes locked on a gear rotation. See something? I asked. He replied slowly. It's vibrating softly, not loud, just unusual. Then he added, you check it like this every night. I nodded. I once saw something small get missed, and it changed someone's life forever. I didn't say more, didn't think he'd understand. But the way he looked at me, it wasn't curiosity. It was like someone had found a missing piece of a puzzle they didn't know they were holding. I never thought a CEO would stand in oil and dust without ever complaining. Evan never groaned, never left early, never griped about the tight boots. He didn't laugh when others mocked me as the uptight guy, didn't join the jokes during break time. He just worked, quietly, focused patiently, and I started to feel something unfamiliar. Not because he was kind, but because in his eyes, I saw myself, a different version, silent, sharp, and seeing far more than I ever expected. Until the day I found out who he really was. And in a single breath, my whole world collapsed and rebuilt itself. A week later, Greg asked me to join a meeting upstairs. I thought it'd be another technical review, but when the door opened, I froze. Sitting in the room was Evan. No hoodie, no capítulo. In front of me stood Nathan Grant, CEO of Orion X. My blood ran cold. He stood, walked toward me, and smiled. Not arrogantly, just genuinely, like a man who had finally confirmed the truth he'd been searching for. Marco, I am Nathan, and I went undercover to understand just one thing. Why a branch with perfect metrics came with a single word of warning. Unusual. I didn't respond. Didn't know how. I never imagined standing before the most powerful man in the company, with oil-stained clothes and worn-out shoes. But he didn't let me stay silent long. Marco, I came looking for faults, but I found something more. A man holding this system together. Not with rank, not with orders, but with his hands, and a heart that never forgot what happened once. Since that day, I'm no longer the weirdo. I'm the one who was seen, understood, and finally trusted. I didn't go on stage, didn't make speeches. I still work the same, still wear gloves, still watch for the little things, still show up early, still leave late. But one thing changed. People now look at me like I belong here, not the odd one out, not the silent shadow in a cold warehouse, but the man their CEO chose to follow. Aurora has changed, but that change didn't start with a strategic plan. It started with one person, someone who dared to do what was right, even when no one was watching. Marco never needed praise. All he ever wanted, it was to make sure that every person in that warehouse got home safe. And sometimes, it's the quietest people who are holding the entire system together. So what about you? Is there someone around you doing good in silence, never asking to be seen? Drop their name in the comments below, because maybe, just maybe, your words will be the first light they've ever received. And if you believe in the power of silent integrity, hit like, subscribe, and share this video so this story can reach the hearts that have long been forgotten. Because the world doesn't lack talented people. What truly needs is more kindness. Marco's story isn't just a tale about a quiet worker. It's a wake-up call, a reminder that greatness isn't about where you stand on the organizational chart. It's about what you choose to do when no one is paying attention. In a world that moves faster by the day, where loud voices are often heard more than quiet actions, Marco reminds us of this. There are people out there quietly patching the cracks in the system, not for applause, but out of conscience. And what have we learned? Kindness doesn't need a spotlight. Integrity doesn't need an award. And sometimes, the ones we notice least, they're the ones keeping everyone else safe. The message of this story is clear and powerful. Do what's right, even if you're the only one doing it. Believe that one small act today, it could be the reason someone makes it home tonight. Marco doesn't need a title. He just needs a world where people take a moment to stop and listen, even to the voices that never speaks.